Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive.
Mm.
Today we're going kind of far afield geographically. We're heading over to Indonesia to
Awesome.
take a look at their mangrove policy.
Okay.
And we're going to be basing this deep dive on a really fascinating document that we found from their Ministry of Environment and Forestry.
Cool.
And I think
Sounds a little dry, but
it does sound a little dry,
I think it'll be interesting.
but I think it's going to be really, really fascinating.
Yeah, I've been looking through it and
What we're going to be looking at is how Indonesia is working to conserve these really vital ecosystems.
right.
What's at stake
Yeah.
for both the environment and the people who depend on them,
Mm-hmm.
and what we can learn from their approach.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's so fascinating about this is that Indonesia has the largest
Oh, wow.
mangrove area in the world.
Really?
It's incredible.
Wow.
And these aren't just trees.
Right.
They're incredibly rich ecosystems that are just crucial for biodiversity, coastal protection, and even, fighting climate change.
Right.
They're like the superheroes of the coast.
Okay. Superhero mangroves.
I love it.
I know, right? But this document isn't just like a celebration of how awesome mangroves are.
No.
It's laying out a plan.
Yes.
It's like a roadmap
a roadmap.
for the future.
Yeah.
And it's pretty ambitious
It is ambitious.
from what I've...
And I think that reflects just how vital mangroves are to Indonesia.
Yeah.
The document outlines 3 core drivers:
Okay.
protecting the environment,
Uh-huh.
ensuring the well-being of communities,
I'm
and
sorry.
upholding global commitments.
Okay, so these are all interconnected.
It's all interconnected. Yeah.
So let's break that down a little bit.
Okay.
When they talk about environmental protection,
Yeah.
what are they specifically trying to protect or safeguard?
Well, think of it this way.
Okay.
Mangroves are facing a lot of pressure.
Right.
Development along the coast,
Yeah.
aquaculture, all sorts of things. And so the policy aims to prevent further damage
All right.
and restore what's been lost.
Okay.
It's about keeping these superhero mangroves
Right.
healthy and strong.
So it's not just about planting new trees.
No.
It's about protecting what's already there.
Exactly. Conservation and protection are just as important as planting.
Got it.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The document really emphasizes the human element.
Okay.
It repeatedly mentions masyarakat.
Masyarakat,
Yeah.
which means communities.
Communities. Okay.
Yeah.
So they see people as being a key part of this.
Absolutely.
By a whole.
They recognize that for mangrove management to be truly sustainable,
Yeah.
it has to involve the people
Right.
who live alongside these ecosystems.
That makes sense.
Their knowledge, their livelihoods, their well-being,
Yeah.
it's all connected to the health of the mangroves.
So how does this community focus
Yeah.
actually play out in their plan?
Well, they've laid out what they call a roadmap to 2030.
And it's not just about hitting, a certain number of hectares planted or something like that.
Right.
They break it down into 3 strategy groups,
Okay.
which I think is really smart
Yeah.
because it shows that they're taking a more holistic approach.
3 groups.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm all ears.
All right. So the first one
Guess the first one.
is called Pemenuhan Kondisi Pemungkin,
Pemenuhan Kondisi Pemungkin.
which translates to basically fulfilling enabling conditions.
Fulfilling enabling conditions.
Yeah, so think of it as like prepping the soil
Okay.
before you plant those mangrove saplings.
I like that analogy.
Yeah,
So what kind of soil prep are we talking about here?
right. So they highlight several key elements.
Okay.
Improving coordination between different parts of the government,
Uh-huh.
better data collection,
Okay.
for more informed decision-making,
Sure.
strengthening institutions,
Mhm.
and most importantly, empowering local communities.
Interesting.
So this emphasis on enabling conditions is really telling, wouldn't you say?
It really is. Yeah. It sounds like they're thinking long term.
Yeah.
They're not just looking for like a quick fix.
Exactly.
Like they're saying, hold on,
Yeah.
let's make sure we have a solid foundation
Right.
before we start building.
Exactly.
But what about the actual building part?
Yeah.
What does action look like?
Yeah. That's where the second group comes in.
Okay.
Implementasi aksi.
Implementasi aksi.
Meaning action implementation.
Okay.
So this is where they get into the nitty-gritty of, restoration,
Oh.
protection, sustainable use,
Okay.
and enforcing regulations.
And there was one thing in here that I thought was really interesting.
Oh, yeah.
They talk about developing what they call incentive, disincentive.
Yes.
which are incentives and penalties.
The carrot and the stick approach?
Yeah, exactly.
You're right.
So they're not just setting rules, they're trying to encourage people to do the right thing.
Exactly. It's about creating a system
Yeah.
that motivates sustainable practices,
Right.
not just punishing the harmful ones.
Right.
And this ties back to their focus on communities. It's about working with people, not against them.
I like that.
Yeah.
So we've got the groundwork,
Yes.
we've got the action plan.
Uh-huh.
What's the third piece of this puzzle?
All right, so the third group is Keberlanyutan,
Keberlanyutan,
which means sustainability.
sustainability.
And this is all about making sure those mangrove gains are lasting,
Right.
not just a flash in the pan.
Right.
So they talk about integrating mangrove conservation into various policies,
Uh-huh.
refining silviculture techniques,
Yeah.
which is the science of managing forests,
Yeah.
and forging strong partnerships,
Okay.
both within Indonesia
Yeah.
and internationally.
That makes a lot of sense, especially with something as complex
It does.
as managing entire ecosystems.
Yeah, it's about bringing everyone to the table.
Right.
You know, government agencies, local communities, NGOs, scientists, even international organizations.
Yeah.
Everyone has a role to play.
Now, speaking of challenges,
Yes.
the document doesn't shy away from those either.
No, it doesn't.
There's a whole section
There is.
dedicated to what they call
Isu strategis rehabilitasi mangrove.
Isu strategis rehabilitasi
About
mangrove.
strategic issues in mangrove rehabilitation.
Okay, so let's get real here.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest hurdles that they're facing?
Well, one of the biggest is finding that balance
Okay.
between conservation
Yeah.
and the needs of the communities who
Right.
depend on these resources.
Right.
Then there's the impacts of climate change and natural disasters,
Yeah.
competing interests for coastal land.
Sure.
It's complex, to say the least.
It sounds like they're not just acknowledging these challenges.
Right.
They're actually trying to come up with solutions
They are.
to address them.
Yes.
So what are some of the solutions they're proposing?
Well, one thing they stress is the need for integrated solutions,
Okay.
recognizing that you can't just tackle these issues in isolation. So, for example, if you're trying to protect a mangrove area,
Yeah.
you also need to consider the livelihoods
Right.
of the people who depend on it
Of course.
and how to make them partners
Right.
in the conservation effort.
So it's about seeing the bigger picture
Exactly.
and understanding that everything's connected.
It's all connected.
But who is ultimately responsible
Yeah,
for making all of this happen?
that's a great question. And the document actually dedicates a whole section to this.
Oh, wow.
It's called Peran Pemerintah Daerah,
Pemerintah Daerah.
the role of local government.
Okay.
They see local governments as being absolutely key.
So it's not just a top-down approach
No, not
from the
really.
national government.
They understand that local governments are the ones closest to the ground.
Right.
They understand the unique challenges and opportunities of their regions.
Makes sense.
They're the ones who can really make this happen.
So what are some of the specific responsibilities?
Okay, so they lay out a bunch of things.
Oh.
Things like regulations,
Oh.
planning,
Okay.
taking action, development,
Right.
community engagement,
Right.
even climate change mitigation within those ecosystems.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot of responsibility.
It really shows the trust that they're placing in that local leadership.
It does.
But it also makes sense if you want to protect an ecosystem, you need to empower the people who live within it.
Exactly. You have to give them ownership
Yeah.
over these resources.
So what I'm hearing is that Indonesia's approach to mangrove conservation
Yeah,
is really about recognizing the interconnectedness
it is.
of everything.
Yes.
The environment, the people, the economy.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
It really is. And that's one of the things that makes this policy so interesting. They're not just aiming for short-term gains. You know, they're trying to create a system that's sustainable for the long haul.
And that brings us back to that word masyarakat, right?
Yes.
Communities.
Communities.
It feels like that's woven into the fabric of this entire policy.
It is. You see, they understand that sustainable mangrove management can't happen in a vacuum.
Right.
It has to involve the people whose lives are intertwined with these ecosystems. Think of it as a partnership.
Yeah.
The community and the mangroves working together.
Their roadmap specifically calls for pemberdayaan masyarakat, empowerment of communities.
Yes.
What does that actually look like in practice?
It's about giving communities a voice in the decision-making process, providing them with the resources and knowledge to manage mangroves sustainably, and making sure they benefit from conservation efforts.
Okay.
It's about recognizing their deep connection to these ecosystems and making them active partners in the process.
So it's not just about protecting mangroves for the sake of the environment.
Right.
It's about protecting the livelihoods and well-being of the people who depend on them.
Exactly. It's about finding that sweet spot where conservation and human development go hand in hand.
I like that.
Yeah.
For example, the document talks about Conservatie den Perlindingen Mangrove,
Yes.
conservation and protection,
Son.
as being just as crucial as planting new trees.
It is.
So it's a much more holistic approach
Yeah.
than just focusing on reforestation.
Exactly.
I'm curious about what those protection efforts actually look like.
Okay.
What are some of the specific things that they're doing beyond planting?
Well, they're taking a multi-pronged approach, focusing on strengthening regulations,
Okay.
educating communities about the importance of mangroves,
Cool.
and empowering them to take ownership of conservation efforts.
Okay.
And, of course, they also talk about monitoring and enforcing those regulations.
It sounds like they're really committed to getting this right.
They are. You see, they understand that you can't just plant a bunch of trees and call it a day.
Right.
You have to address the underlying drivers of mangrove loss,
Uh-huh.
engage with communities,
Yeah.
and create a system that ensures long-term sustainability.
And that system you're talking about, is that what they mean by Kirilanjitan?
No.
Sustainability.
Sustainability is all about creating a system that can thrive over the long haul. It's not just about short-term gains.
Right.
It's about building something that can withstand future challenges
Yeah.
and continue to provide benefits for generations to come.
We've talked about the goals.
Mhm.
We've talked about the strategies.
Yes.
This really impressive emphasis on community involvement.
Right.
But the document also gets real about the challenges, right?
It does, and there are some significant ones.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest ones that they point out?
Well, balancing conservation with the needs of those communities.
Right.
Dealing with the impacts of climate change and natural disasters,
Yeah.
and navigating competing interests for coastal land.
Yeah. That's a big one.
It's a big one.
Given all that,
Yeah.
do you think this roadmap is realistic?
I think it's important to acknowledge the challenges, but I also see a real sense of commitment in this document.
Okay.
They're not shying away from the tough questions.
Yeah.
And they're proposing some innovative solutions. One thing that stands out to me is their emphasis on integrated solutions.
Okay.
Recognizing that you can't just address these issues in isolation.
Right. Can you give me an example
Sure.
of what an integrated solution might look like in practice?
Okay, so imagine a coastal community
Okay.
that relies heavily on fishing in mangrove areas.
Yeah.
An integrated solution might involve working with them to establish community-managed protected zones where fishing is restricted to allow those areas to regenerate.
So kind of giving them a break
Yeah,
so
exactly.
they can come back stronger.
Exactly. At the same time, you'd provide training and resources
Okay.
to help the community develop sustainable aquaculture practices,
Okay.
like farming shellfish or seaweed.
Interesting.
So this reduces pressure on wild fish stocks while also providing a new source of income.
Gotcha.
And to top it off, you might plant mangrove trees along vulnerable coastlines to act as natural buffers,
Right.
protecting the community from storms and erosion.
So it's a win-win-win.
It is.
You're protecting the environment,
Right.
you're supporting livelihoods,
Yeah.
and you're making the communities more resilient
Exactly.
to climate change impacts.
It's a triple win.
But these integrated solutions sound pretty complex.
They are?
How can they ensure that these plans actually translate into real on-the-ground action?
That's the key question, isn't it?
It is.
And to their credit, they acknowledge that implementation is just as important as having a good plan.
Okay.
They highlight a few key elements: capacity building,
Okay.
financial resources, and once again, community engagement.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit.
Sure.
Starting with capacity building.
Yeah.
What does that entail?
Capacity building is all about equipping local governments with the tools, training, and resources they need to effectively implement these complex plans.
Okay.
So this might involve training programs for government officials, providing technical assistance from experts,
Okay.
and giving them access to the latest scientific data and best practices.
So giving them the knowledge and the skills
Exactly.
that they need to succeed.
Yeah.
But knowledge and skills aren't enough, right?
No, they're not.
These initiatives also require funding.
Absolutely. Mangrove conservation needs significant financial investment.
Right.
The document talks about securing funding from both domestic and international sources to make these projects happen.
And finally, we have community engagement, which has been a recurring theme throughout this entire deep dive.
It has.
Why is it so crucial for successful implementation?
Because at the end of the day, conservation efforts can't succeed without the support and participation of the people who live alongside these ecosystems.
Right.
Engaging communities in the planning and decision-making process,
Uh-huh.
respecting their traditional knowledge, and
Right.
ensuring that they benefit from conservation efforts. It's all crucial for long-term success.
It's about empowering those communities to become stewards
Exactly.
of their own natural resources.
It's about recognizing that communities are not just beneficiaries of conservation,
Right.
they're essential partners in the process.
So it sounds like Indonesia's approach to mangrove conservation is a multifaceted one.
It is.
They're not just focused on planting trees.
Right.
They're tackling the underlying drivers of mangrove loss.
Yes.
They're empowering communities.
Uh-huh.
And they're building a system that can thrive for the long term.
Precisely. And what's particularly encouraging is that they're not shying away from the challenges. They're acknowledging the need for capacity building, securing financial resources,
Right.
and most importantly, community engagement to make these plans a reality.
It's an ambitious vision,
It is.
but one that has the potential to create a brighter future
Yes.
for both Indonesia and the planet.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really inspiring to see a country taking such a comprehensive approach to conservation. Like they're really going all in on this.
What's particularly striking to me is how this policy goes beyond just, environmental concerns. It's woven into their national development plans, their economic strategies.
Wow.
It's clear that Indonesia sees healthy mangroves as fundamental to their future.
That's a great point. It's not just an environmental issue. It's economic social. It even touches on national security. Healthy mangroves mean resilient coastlines, thriving fisheries, secure livelihoods for millions of people.
Exactly. And that interconnectedness is a theme that runs throughout this entire document. They're not just talking about planting trees, they're talking about building a sustainable future for Indonesia,
Right.
one where people and nature thrive together.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah.
The importance of mangroves, Indonesia's ambitious goals, the strategies they're using, the challenges they face, and that really crucial element of community engagement. If there's one key takeaway you want our listener to walk away with, what would it be?
For me, the key takeaway is that Indonesia's approach to mangrove conservation is a model for the world. It's holistic, it's integrated, it recognizes that you can't separate environmental, social, and economic issues. They're all intertwined. And it's not just about protecting nature for nature's sake, it's about understanding how vital healthy ecosystems are to human well-being and a thriving economy. It's a powerful example of what's possible when a country commits to this kind of comprehensive, forward-thinking approach.
And the thing is, this isn't just relevant to Indonesia.
Yeah.
Mangroves are vital ecosystems all around the world. They provide so many benefits to both people and the planet.
Absolutely. What Indonesia is doing has global implications. The lessons they're learning, the strategies they're developing, those can be applied elsewhere.
Yeah.
Think about the emphasis on community engagement, the need for integrated solutions, the understanding that conservation and development can work together. These are principles that can guide mangrove conservation efforts everywhere.
So what can our listener, someone who might be, far removed from the mangrove forests of Indonesia, do to contribute to these efforts? How can we support this kind of work?
That's a great question. There are actually a lot of things you can do, even from afar. You can support organizations working on mangrove conservation, whether through donations or volunteering your time. You can educate yourself about the importance of mangroves and share that knowledge with others. Even just being a conscious consumer, making sure your choices aren't contributing to deforestation or unsustainable practices, that all makes a difference.
Those are great starting points. It's a reminder that even small actions can have a ripple effect. They can contribute to a bigger movement for change.
Exactly. And the more people who understand the vital role mangroves play, the more support there will be for conservation efforts around the world.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listener with a final thought to ponder. If Indonesia can embark on such an ambitious and transformative journey to protect their mangroves, what's stopping the rest of us from doing the same in our own corners of the world?
What a powerful question to end on. I hope this deep dive has been eye-opening and inspiring.
Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of Indonesian mangrove policy. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those tough questions.